Thank you very much for clicking and choosing this podcast. Shall I introduce myself? My name's Emma Goswell. I live in Manchester, England, and I'm your host for Coming Out Stories. So, if you're new to us, we're a podcast from What Goes On Media, and we bring you real-life stories every single month from fabulous individuals who just happen to be part of the LGBTQ+ community. Now, in this episode, you're going to hear from Dean Atta. He's an award-winning author of novels aimed at kids and young adults. Having said that, he has just penned his first adult book. It's a very personal memoir called Person Unlimited, an ode to my black queer body. Now, Dean's a Londoner with both Jamaican and Cypriot heritage, something that really informs his book, and something that we touched on in our interview too. But I started by asking him when he knew he might be different.
I think when I was about 6, when I wanted a Barbie doll, really, that was when I kind of got a sense that was different. And also, you know, when I went to play at other people's houses, the girls had Barbies, most of them, but boys didn't. They had Action Man, they had trucks and cars, and video games kind of were universal for boys and girls. So, you know, when people came round, if it was a girl, like I might show her my Barbie, but if it was a boy, I'd be more like, let's play my Mega Drive or Nintendo on my, you know, the games consoles, and I would keep Barbie hidden.
Isn't it interesting how at such a young age we know the rules and we know we should sort of hide parts of ourselves, exactly. I guess. You know, you're sort of censoring yourself even at the age of 6. Yeah. It's terrible, isn't it, really?
But also in the school playground, we used to play this game in primary school called Kiss Chase. And the girls didn't mind being caught by me, like, and sometimes I'm like, why are they running so slow? Like, and I was just like, oh gosh, I'm gonna kiss another girl, like, and so yeah, it was quite funny because I was also invited to girls' sleepover parties and birthday parties, and no other boys were. You know, I was obviously invited to boys' parties too, but like I was the only boy invited to girl sleepover parties, so I got a sense that I was very trusted and seen like one of the girls in some way, even though I didn't identify that way at all. Like, but I just was like, okay, if I'm invited, it's a party. There'll be food and we'll have fun and it'll be great.
So that's interesting, isn't it? That you had a sense of how you were different, but so did the other kids. You know, they pick up on things, don't they? But it sounds like, from what you said, that sort of manifested itself in a positive way. But was it ever negative from other boys saying that you were a girl in a negative way, or was there any element of bullying?
No one said I was a girl, and no one like pressured me to play football. So I would do things like skipping or cat's cradle with this bit of string that you loop around, and
I remember that from the 70s, Dean,
and these hand clapping games where you clap and sing a song, and like, so I was happy-go-lucky. And I think primary school was quite a breeze. It was secondary school when things were a bit more tense, and I kind of got the impression that people would say things to maybe provoke me, like not in a negative way, but they'd say, oh, you're always with girls, like which one's your girlfriend, like, you know, you're such a ladies' man. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, if you say so. And obviously I'd have crushes on boys, even like ones I was close friends with, and not tell them how I felt. And then when I did come out when I was 15, it was not an accident, but it wasn't intentional full coming out. There was just one boy when I was 15 that I had a sense that he might like me back, you know, from the times we'd hung out, you know, in groups, never just the two of us, but I just got a sense of, his looks lingered on me, like, you know, I obviously looked at him a lot, and I felt like there was something there. So I wrote him a little note, a little letter, and, you know, I was one of those kids already that would like write notes and pass them around class to my friends, and I did a similar thing with him and wrote a note about him saying I had a crush on him and would he like to be my boyfriend. I think there were even tick boxes for yes or no.
Oh my God, you get multiple choice like a quiz.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And then he wrote back and
very cute.
Let me know that he was bisexual, but he had a girlfriend at another school, and I thought the girlfriend was made up, like, but I actually found out some years later that she was real, because she then moved to our school in the sixth form, and she corroborated this story of being his girlfriend back then.
God.
But that was it. But everyone kind of found out in a kind of like whisper game that I'd asked him out and he had said no. And so what had happened was,
Oh no.
it wasn't about me being gay. It was like, oh, he said no, you were rejected. Like, and so once I'd confirmed, you know, they'd ask me, oh, are you gay? And I'd say, yeah. And they're like, is he gay? And I was like, that's up to him to tell you. Like, I didn't kind of want to out him. I just wanted to not hide who I was anymore. But then there was never another boy at school that I made advances to. I kind of just let it be after that because I just thought, like, it's too much drama.
Isn't it just any sort of relationship? Let's just sort of place this geographically and in a time zone.
Okay.
So this was London in the mid 1980s, right?
Well, that's when I was born. I was born in 84, so this was London in the late 1990s. Yeah, that's when I was at secondary school. It was like, it'll be fine. When I go to uni, that's when things will get going. Like, that's what I said to myself in the end, because I was just like, there were still people around, not at school, that like kind of people introduced me to, like, you know, someone was like, meet my hairdresser, or like I'd go on like websites and, you know, talk to older guys, but it all felt a bit like seedy to me. I didn't really enjoy that side of things, and I wanted an out in the open relationship with someone my own age. That was the goal. Like,
that was the goal.
Yeah, so the fact that there were older guys or closeted guys that were interested in being with me was fine, but that never felt like the real thing to me. Like, because I wanted it to be out in the open, and I wanted to feel like I could bring them home to my mum. I kind of haven't mentioned the coming out to my mum yet, so maybe I should.
No, I was going to say, so by the time you'd gone to university, it sounds like you were quite out at school.
I was out at school, and it did go okay.
That's quite a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And were you very much in the minority of being an out student at school,
I was the
even
only
in the
one
90s?
that was out. You know, no one else was known to be gay or bi when I was at school. You know, there was obviously that guy I'd asked out, but he wasn't out. Later discovered there were several other people even in my own year, but they weren't out at the time, you know. And I was actually surprised when, you know, I met them as adults and they were like, yeah, I'm gay now. And I was like, what? Where were you when I needed you? Like, I needed friends, allies, you know, like, you know, so it was really interesting to realize they were there, but they were like not ready, and that's fine.
Yeah, same here. I was convinced I was the only person in my entire school, and yeah, they all creep out the closet, don't they? Eventually, but but you always think you're the only person in the world, don't you? So it's a tough, lonely place to be for a while, isn't it? When you do think you're the only one.
But you know, people were kind to me. My mum was fine, you know. So when I came out to my mum, I was 15. I'd asked out this boy, and then, you know, I had a bit of a, I don't know, there was a couple guys at school that weren't so nice, but they didn't do anything direct. So they did this really weird thing where in class, they used to just really quietly under their breath go, gay, gay, like whisper the word gay. And then when I'd try and look for where it had come from, I kind of knew where it had come from, but they'd carry on as if they hadn't said anything and the teacher hadn't heard it and no one else in the class said anything. And so I was getting upset about that because it wasn't like in your face bullying. It was this really pernicious kind of thing that was going on. And so I was at home, I was washing the dishes after dinner, and I was crying into the sink. I didn't realize I was crying until my mum came in the room and said, what's wrong? Then I realized I was crying, and then I said, oh, there's these boys at school, they're calling me gay. And she said, well, you know it's not true, it's okay. And I said, it is true, mummy, it is true. And I fell to the floor and I was sobbing, and she sat down beside me and put my head in her lap, and I kind of carried on crying, and she just stroked me for a while, like, and let me be. When I calmed down, she's like, well, you know, you just got to be careful. You've got to use condoms because of HIV. And I was just like, I know about condoms. Like, I don't want to hear this. It was just like the first thing after, you know, it's okay, was that you got to be safe. And that just wasn't what I wanted to hear at the time, because I wasn't even thinking about having sex. I just wanted to hold a guy's hand and kiss him. Like, that was all I was looking for at 15. Yeah.
It's very easy to judge, isn't it? And you feel the emotions you felt at the time.
Mm,
But I guess in retrospect, you kind of forgive your mum and understand that, her concern came from a place of love and she just,
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah,
didn't
because
want the worst for you.
it was,
Yeah.
if we cast our mind back to the 80s and 90s, we had the Tombstone adverts on TV,
Yeah.
we had obviously Section 28, and we had just rampant homophobia everywhere you looked. And even the stories of gay characters were often tragedies on TV. It wasn't perceived to be a happy life to be gay, though the word gay means happy once upon a time. So
That's ironic, isn't
very
it? Yeah.
ironic. So I understood where my mum was coming from, and I, put that coming out story in my memoir, Personal Unlimited, because she said it should be there. Because I felt like, oh, maybe it's not showing her in the best light, but actually it was honest, and this was what happened,
Mm.
and this was a reflection of our time, and we shouldn't shy away from that. And it's important to see that moment between mother and son, because we can wish went a different way, but I think that's the way it went, and our relationship is strong, me and my mum, and I feel like I'm glad she's happy I'm writing about our life. Do you know what I mean? Because when you write your own life story, you are including several other people, my mum being one, my partner being another. But, my grandparents who are no longer with us, my mum's parents, I write quite a bit about them in there as well. And that was tough because, they're not here to not defend themselves, but even, for me to check with them that they're okay with it. But that decision I had to make, because I can't tell just my story, because my mother and the generation before, my grandparents, that's what makes me, that's kind of where I come from. And the
Mm.
section of the book at the end of Personal Unlimited is called Roots, because that's about, going back to my roots, going to Cyprus and Jamaica, and thinking about like how those countries make me who I am, and how the connection between Britain and these kind of former crown colonies, as they were called in the 60s, how that has made me a British person living in London, who's mixed race and has these kind of connections to other countries. And that's a part of me. And, being black or brown or not white in the UK, you have to know about your heritage, because people are going to ask you. Like, people are going to ask you where your family's from, so you kind of have to have some answers.
It's about like, yeah, London. But having that heritage, do you feel that it's harder to come out as gay? I have heard people say that before. It's one thing to come out as gay, but when you're gay and black or mixed
Mm.
race, it is harder. Do you find that
Yeah,
yourself to be true?
I didn't come out as gay to everyone in my family. Like my grandparents who were in Cyprus, I didn't tell them I was gay, and they died not knowing. So, and then my
Mm.
family in Jamaica, there's still people I haven't directly told I'm gay. They might know, they might have Googled me, but when I've been to Jamaica, it doesn't come up in conversation, and I'm very
You're quite out now, yes.
no, but I'm very reserved when I'm there. People would refer to me as a shy guy when I'm in Jamaica, like,
Mm.
because I seem like I'm not very outgoing, but I'm actually a bit terrified, if I'm honest.
Well, I
Still,
I was going to say, I mean, I've heard lots of different things about Jamaica, but I've
mm,
never heard that it's great for
it's
LGBT
not. It's
people. Do
still
you feel
illegal.
unsafe when you go there?
It's illegal
Yeah.
to be gay there, or to have gay sex there, and people are beaten up, murdered, imprisoned,
Mm. Mm.
ostracized. It's no joke. It's a really dangerous place to be LGBTQ plus. And so
Mm.
when I visit, I'm not out, honestly. So that's where I'm at with it. And everyone's on their own journey, and some people have that same thing going on living in the UK. The communities that they're part of wouldn't accept them, so they do kind of compartmentalize their life, and they might have friends and
Mm.
lovers who know their sexuality, and then family, and family friends that don't know. And I think that's valid. That's whatever makes you feel safe, whatever gets you through life, like, so I kind of don't feel it's imperative on everyone to come out to everyone.
That's very interesting, and people do it in stages.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah.
people come out. Generally speaking, people come out to friends, and then maybe family, and
Mm,
then grandparents are a bit of an afterthought if
yeah,
they're still around. It's a lot longer, or sometimes never. There's no right or wrong with coming out,
yeah.
is
My
there? Really?
Jamaican granny and all my Jamaican family that live in the UK know I'm gay, and ask after my partner,
Mm.
and so there's love there, and there's support there. Family that's
Yeah.
here in the UK, but when I go back to Jamaica, I just think again, not worth the hassle, not worth the drama. Like, if I was there for an extended period, I'd probably want to connect with the LGBT community in Jamaica, and I'd have to negotiate the safest way to do that. You know, there are organizations like JFlag but like people I've heard of doing great campaigning work in Jamaica for the LGBT community. I just haven't personally connected with it yet. I've still got time though. I'm only 39. I've still got a life of activism ahead of me if that's the route I'm going down. I don't know. I just like to see myself as a writer, but because not enough of us have been given the opportunities to write these kind of queer stories and Black queer stories, you know, it's seen as activism by some, but for me, it's just like, it's almost life-saving, because I want to feel like I was here. I want to see, you know, that I existed, I made a difference. And the way I can do that is by writing my story. And that makes me feel like I have purpose. You know, we have purpose on an interpersonal level, like being a good friend, son, uncle. But work, I think, is another way of giving our life purpose. And my work is writing.
It was literally a kitchen sink drama, wasn't it, with your mother crying over the dishes? Yeah. I know your dad isn't in the picture, but were there any other siblings or other members of your family that you had to come out to?
Yeah, my mum basically said, you need to come out to your sister. I have a younger sister who's 8 years younger than me. So she said, you need to come out to your sister, especially if you're going to bring boyfriends home. She needs to understand what's going on. I was like, does she? My mum said, yes. And I was like, okay. So I, you know, sat her down and I said, oh, I'm gay. And she said, I know. And I was like, excuse me, how? She's like, oh, a friend at school, you know, that I'd met. She said his name. She said, he's gay too. And I was like, really? Like, people are coming out in primary school? Like, what's going on? Like, times are changing so rapidly. So yeah, she was already like, yeah, I've got a gay friend. And I was just like, wow. So I kind of, never had to worry about, you know, that after that, because my sister and that generation were clearly already more open-minded than mine.
Yeah.
So
how old was she?
So 8 years younger.
So she was 8
yeah,
at the
yeah.
time?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, this gives me a lot of hope for the future, Dean, to be
Exactly.
honest, for future generations. Yeah. Oh. And you talk about your work. Now, you've mentioned your memoir a few times, Person Unlimited, An Ode to My Black Queer Body.
Mhm.
And that's really important to write about yourself. But why was it important for you, you know, in terms of your coming out process, why was it important for you to write YA novels and to write for young adults as well?
Because I think you've got to approach things differently for different audiences. So when you're writing for young people, for teenagers or children, you also have to get past the parents and the teachers. And so you kind of have to think about what those adults think is appropriate for the children to read. Also, like, find the right tone. And because I have young people in my life, I've got nieces, and I've also, you know, got friends with kids, but then I also do lots of work in schools. I know how to pitch things to different age groups. So it was fun. It's a great challenge. And also you get to connect with your younger self. I think my younger self, I mean, he didn't have all the pressures of, you know, social media, and the internet only came in earnest when I was in my teens. But like, the interpersonal stuff between kids is still what it is. They're still in groups and out groups. They're still trying to fit in. They're still bullying. They're still trying to mimic your friends or be seen as cool. And, you know, I can relate to all of that. I was a bit of a butterfly as a teenager, in the sense that I'd go from group to group. So I kind of have a sense of like the different dynamics at school as well. So when I set things within a school context, I kind of understand which group I'm going to place my protagonist in. But then also when I'm writing about family stuff, I try and be understanding of different families. You know, some people are in a single parent home, some people may be predominantly raised by a grandparent, some people may have been in the care system. And so I try and reflect the diversity of family, and I try and think about also chosen family for the older characters, you know, for teenagers, and the idea that we have a birth family or a family we're raised by, but then we may go on to choose a family, especially as a queer person. And those are not our blood relatives, but people that kind of step in to fill the roles that we need, you know, in our lives. And we do the same for others. So for me, I just wanted to show there's not one way to be, but also there's not only one type of family. There's not only one type of coming out or not coming out, you know. So for me, it's just about showing diversity to young people, whether it's about race or sexuality or gender as well.
And of course, you went to school during Section 28,
Hmm.
where, any even discussion about LGBT issues was banned by the government.
Mm,
So to see your books now in school libraries
yeah.
talking about LGBT issues must be really powerful and exciting for you, right?
Yeah, that was stage one, like school libraries. Like the stage we're on now is like school curriculum. Like I've seen some year
Wow.
nine in school, like where they're teaching the Black Flamingo to the whole of year nine over a course of 20
Wow.
lessons. And like I'm like, how did you find space to put that in? And they're like, oh, we replaced Of Mice and Men with the Black Flamingo. I'm just like, wow.
Wow.
So that's going on too. So there's whole swathes of young people being taught my book, not just being given the opportunity to borrow it from the library. So I just feel really honored. And you don't realize what it can do when you write a book. You kind of just do your best job, and cross your fingers when it goes to print, but actually teachers, librarians have really taken it on board. Booksellers have really pushed it as well. And I feel fellow authors have championed this book. So I just feel really lucky, and it won the Stonewall Book Award in the US, which really helped US recognition, because as a British author, it's not a guarantee that US market's going to take interest. But then it's also
Mm.
been banned in some states in the US, and the book bannings that are happening there, which
Oh,
resembles Section
God.
28 in some ways to me, so the progress
I mean,
isn't
good
isn't
publicity, but
one
how
direction.
depressing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think things can be taken away from us as well, so we need to stay on it as LGBT people, but all people.
Gosh, and just thinking back to my school days, and you probably think about your own as well, just how powerful that is for young queer kids to be at school and see themselves represented, not just in the library, but on the curriculum as well, and
Absolutely.
begin to understand what it means to be part of our community.
Absolutely. And for me, when I go into schools and do events and then afterwards have a little book signing for those that want to get the book, what really moves me is when there's a trans child who wants me to write their chosen name in the book, and I'm the first adult
Mm.
they may be like asking to write down their chosen name, and it just feels
Wow.
so important. And I've got trans and non-binary characters in all of my young adult books, and it feels really great that I have the opportunity to kind of make them feel seen and represented. Yeah, I feel really fortunate to be doing this job and to be able to connect directly with young readers as well as the adults that pass these books to them too.
Yeah, because quite often I ask people about coming out at work,
Mm,
but you've always gone down the route of being out and proud,
mm.
and celebrating your queerness and your sexuality and your heritage through your work. Really, that's been really important, hasn't it, for you to be out and open throughout your whole career?
Absolutely. And I think, it's great that we're seeing more out teachers as well. I think that was something that was
Mm.
never there for me. There was teachers I thought perhaps were gay or lesbian at school, but it was never confirmed, and it was rude to ask, so we just kind of didn't
Yeah,
didn't know if we had any LGBT teachers.
and legally they weren't
They
allowed to
weren't
talk
allowed
about
to
it.
tell
Yeah.
us. And so
Mm.
now, whether, teachers are, talking about their partners and spouses when it's, appropriate. And also a lot of teachers wearing these rainbow lanyards and rainbow laces or pin badges for pride, just to show their allies as well. And I think that's as important, for these LGBT kids
Mm.
to see that, whether the teacher is LGBT or not, that they are, an ally, and expressing that through, some symbolism, in what they wear in their work attire. So I just feel like, yeah, that's really important, and it does make a difference to young people as well. And there's been organizations set up, in the past to kind of help teachers get to that stage, like Schools Out, and then LGBT History Month, which I'm a patron of, doing so much to give the resources and the support to teachers and educators to provide the right messaging, and give them the kind of like, yeah, instant resources available so that they can get it past anyone that wants to like prohibit them or
Yeah.
make it a challenge. It's like, well, no, here is a pre-approved lesson plan, here is the posters, here are the all the resources. So I love Schools Out for that. LGBT History Month, because even though we do this stuff all year round, I think having a focus of February for LGBT history gives everyone a reason to kind of say, we're going to do the display, we're going to do the assembly, we're going to, make it happen now, and hopefully it lasts the rest of the year.
And as we're talking about young people, but this question doesn't have to be directed to young people particularly, but I always like to end by asking people, if they had any advice for people that were listening that maybe haven't come out yet, and that could be older people as well, to be honest. But if you had any advice, someone that came out when you were 15 a few years ago, and you're now living your best, happy, gay, out and proud life, what advice would you give to people not quite taken this first step yet?
The first step is coming out to yourself. So it's for you to decide who you are, what you are, how you want to identify. And don't let it be put upon you by anyone else's assumptions. Just figure it out for yourself. For me, poetry, writing things down, journaling, that really helped me come to terms and understand myself. But then, things do also change over time. So it may not be what you come out as is what you stay as. So don't be too, don't get too wrapped up in the labels, because we're all fluid in various ways. So, it's a journey, and try and enjoy it. I know it's tough, but find your tribe, and know that tribe may change. And also, this is a long answer, present its own challenges, because, even within the community, we have like cliques and in groups and out groups. So, I think having a range of friends and people around you who are queer and not queer, who are, identify the same way as you and differently, will keep you more rounded and balanced as well. So just keep an open mind, even to how you are going to identify.
So you mentioned your autobiography earlier, your memoir, Person Unlimited. Tell us a little bit about what readers can expect and what the process was like to write it as well, I guess.
So Person Unlimited, An Ode to My Black Queer Body, is a book about me and my body, but I think in a really accessible way, talking about the relationship one has to their body. So I move through 7 body parts, starting with the hair, moving down to eyes, voice, heart, and so on, and tell really heartfelt personal stories, but with a sense of, these are stories that many of us have, gone through or experienced. So I talk about, how I feel I'm seen, perceived, and see other people in the world. I talk about my coming out, but also, my love for family, friends through the heart section. I think the starting section, I guess, gives a clear illustration of like the tone of the book. It starts with my hair. So that's the crown section. And that talks about different hairstyles I've had, such as afro, dreadlocks, cane rows, and kind of how your hair shapes a lot of your identity, especially if you're a Black person, and how the kind of people put different identifiers upon you. So when I had the dreadlocks, how I was kind of perceived to be a Rastafarian and assumed to be a weed smoker and all those kind of things, and how you have an afro and it's kind of unruly and maybe not seen as tidy, and like kind of what societal pressures put upon you. But like an interesting section for me was a section I wrote about my hands, and my left hand in particular, and my relationship to my grandfather, who grew up in Cyprus, and he was left-handed originally, but in school they tied his left hand behind his back, and they didn't want people to write with their left hands. It was seen as backwards. It was seen as, just not the right thing to do. And so whenever I would write with my left hand in front of him, he'd say, "You're lucky." I think he was saying more than that I could be left-handed. It was that I was living a more free life than he had. That connection to family is there through these kind of like bodily stories, so to speak. So that's kind of a little flavor of it. So it talks about family, it talks about belonging. I talk about my mixed heritage, being Greek Cypriot and Jamaican, and growing up in London. Talk about being gay, coming out, mental health, but also kind of a journey to self-love through things like, yoga, meditation, a good relationship with my partner, who I've been with for 6 years now. And it's got a feel-good vibe, even through the highs and lows that it goes through.
The wonderful Dean Atta. I just love his laugh. And I also genuinely really love his book, Person Unlimited. I don't think we mentioned it in the interview, but he started life as a poet, and I think that really comes across in that book. It truly is beautifully crafted. So yes, get it now at all good bookstores. Person Unlimited it's called. It's out now. And I always say this, do support your independent and, if possible, queer bookstore. And while you're there, why not pick up a copy of Coming Out Stories too? But yeah, Dean's book really does make me want to get back to my yoga. These things slip by, don't they, when you've got a 2-year-old in your life? But yes, I need to get back to it for my mental and physical health. And you know what? You wait around for a YA author for yonks, and then 2 come along at once. I say this because next episode you will hear from the multi-award-winning author Simon James Green. And like Dean, he writes stories for kids or young adults. And he also spends a lot of time going into schools to talk about his writing. Something that has meant that in the past, not only have schools tried to ban him and his books, but unbelievably, he's even received death threats.
You know, people saying I deserve to die and burn in hell and that sort of thing. People saying, you know, that it was indoctrination, that I was going into these schools to try and convince young boys to be gay. And this idea that, you know, I'm so charismatic, people will just be inspired to be queer if they hear me talk,